to tell you a story. It's a story about a place that I discovered recently, a place that should be entirely boring and has turned out to be fascinating and lovely and peaceful and a little bit perspective changing. So, here we go. So, once upon a time, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, the land that is now Michigan was completely covered by glaciers. We're talking like mile-thick sheet of ice covering absolutely everything. And over time, as the Earth changed and the planet changed, that glacier, those glaciers, plural actually, they retreated and they went farther north. And as they left, a few key things happened. One thing, the most famous one that probably every kid growing up in Michigan learns about, is that these glaciers scooped out what are now the Great Lakes, these big, beautiful bodies of water. But what most kids don't learn about is that these glaciers also left behind a bunch of other stories. For instance, they dragged down huge boulders from northern Michigan and Canada, boulders so old that have seen so much that I genuinely can't wrap my mind around it. They also left behind what are called kames. Kames form when glaciers collect rock and sediment, and then as the ice melts or the ice retreats, it drops all of that stuff, usually into a sort of nice conical pile. Well, the story properly starts with one of those kames. Long ago, a glacier deposited a kame made mostly of gravel and other small rocks in a city that is now Ann Arbor, Michigan. And hundreds of years went by, and that kame was more or less undisturbed until the 1970s, when construction crews came by to build a new highway. Turns out, if you want to make the foundation for a major highway, such as I-94, it helps to have a giant pile of rock and gravel. So these construction crews came in and they dug up the kame, and they took all the gravel and scattered it around, and now there's a lovely highway. When the construction crews left, they left behind a little bit of a wasteland, a huge stony pit without a single plant or lichen or anything to be found. But then came the Fox family. The Foxes bought this land and they started living on the edge of the property. And despite offers to, buy this pit and turn it into a housing development or what have you, they didn't do anything with it. They let the land sit, and for 50 years now, nothing has been built there. In fact, the land has now been bought by the township, and it's called the Fox Science Preserve, and it is unreasonably interesting. See, the story of the Fox Science Preserve, it starts with a glacier, and in a way, it ends with the glacier. Because when glaciers come by, they drop kames, sure, and boulders and all kinds of other fun stuff, but they also scrape and carve up the land. So as soon as a glacier leaves, you end up in this situation that looked a lot like that abandoned gravel pit. Just a big, gravelly, rocky, dusty area without much going on. So since the Fox family let that land sit for 50 years, it's just been recovering, I guess. It started with lichens and little plants that started to take over the area, and they broke down the gravel and the rocks, and they started to turn it into soil. And now, in 2020, there are trees growing there. There's juniper and baby pine trees and poplar trees, who every time I look at their leaves, I just thought about shiny coins fluttering in the wind. And that's not me making this up either. The Fox Science Preserve is known for being a sort of time machine. It's an analog to what North America, specifically what Michigan was like about 12,000 years ago after the glaciers left. And shoot, I love this place. On a broad scale, it's really cool to me that this is as close as I will ever get to being able to time travel, to being able to go back to Michigan right after the Ice Age and walk around and touch things and explore the landscape on my own. But also, there are just some really interesting things here. Like, the first thing we came across were a bunch of fossils. They're mostly shells left behind from when Michigan, or what's now Michigan, was covered by this warm, shallow sea some 350-ish million years ago. To give you a sense of the time there, my favorite comparison these days is putting everything in terms of Pangaea, the last supercontinent that I learned about sometime in middle school. 350 million years ago was so long ago that Pangaea had not even properly formed yet, so the continents were just all shuffled up. But anyway, to just be at what's basically this park, this nature preserve, and come across a boulder filled with fossils from ancient animals was just kind of mind-boggling. I mean, how often do you go for a walk and just behold some ancient shells? Earlier, I mentioned boulders, and the Fox Science Preserve has a very good one. The oldest and largest boulder in the park was brought down from northern Michigan, Canada, by glaciers thousands of years ago, and it is so stinking old. This thing comes in at 2.4 billion years old, which is 8 times older than Pangea, to go back to my scale, but it's also more than half as old as the entire Earth. And it is very big and very smooth, and yes, we absolutely used it as a slide, which brought me a small form of delight because when this rock first formed, multicellular life had not even evolved yet. So that's a way to make you feel like a child. So there's just a bunch of fascinating stuff here that I'm not normally exposed to. And then, there's the more squishy philosophical reason I like this place too, which is that lately I've had an especially hard time not getting sucked into the news and not getting sucked into social media. So it was really refreshing to find this place that is big, wide, open, quiet, and mostly empty, and to just get to explore and turn over rocks and run up hills and play there for a while. It was also cool for me to think about how much this landscape has changed, from being covered with a mile of ice to being a cave to being a gravel pit to slowly growing toward being a forest. Because someday, centuries from now, if things keep going as they do, this abandoned gravel pit will be a forest, just like other ones in Michigan. And sure, that's predictable because that's like how ecosystems work, but it also feels like a story of resilience, I guess. Or, maybe that's just how I need to read it right now, and that's okay too. Overall, the Science Preserve really reminded me that I'm living in a specific place in history right now. That history stretches back behind me for hundreds, thousands, millions, and billions of years, and it stretches in front of me too. Which, again, is kind of like an obvious thing about life, but this current moment with the pandemic and with everything else going on has been so turbulent and so consuming and so different that I felt very stuck in the present. So really, it was just grounding to be in a place that is so rich with history and so rich with possibility. It reminded me that our current moment is hard and unprecedented, to use that word, but it's not the only moment. So, maybe that's encouraging to you too. If you liked this sort of thing, I've been posting a lot of nature photos and the science stories behind them over on a shiny new Instagram page. So you can find me there at alexis.writes, and I will also include a link in the description. For now though, thanks for adventuring with me. I hope this video made you think about something. I hope you learned something cool, and I'll see you next time.